I want to talk about the software that I use to make my podcasts and videos, and I'm going to break it into 3 categories. Category 1 is essential software. This is software that I use on every single video or podcast that I make. Category 2 is useful software. This is stuff that I use most of the time, but not every time. And then category 3 is bonus software. This is stuff that I use every once in a while, but it's really cool and really happy to have, and I'm really happy to have it whenever I do use it. I will say that my most important piece of software is DaVinci Resolve, which has a very useful free version, but today's video is about software you're probably not already using. As I go through the list, let me know in the comment section down below how many you are already new and which ones you're already using. And if you know other tools that I didn't mention, tell us in the comments so that we can all learn together. Now, let's get started. I want to start today off with channel sponsor Riverside, which I use on every single episode of my podcast. Before Riverside, I would use OBS or Ecamm Live, which are both really great pieces of software, but they both have one drawback, and that is that they are recording everything on your computer, or in my case, on my computer. Here's what I mean by this. You invite a guest and you set up all of your scenes and then you hit record. Your video and audio quality looks great, but your guests always looks a little bit blurrier. They always sound a little bit compressed, and that's because before it hits your computer to be recorded, it has to be transmitted over the internet. Here's how Riverside is different. It records locally on everyone's machine. So my video and audio is recorded on my machine, and my guest's video and audio is recorded on their machine. And then at the same time, they're uploading everyone's stuff to the Riverside servers and syncing everything up in the background, where I can then edit on their website or download all of the files and edit in DaVinci Resolve, or I can just download the completed file when I'm done editing on Riverside's website. But Riverside does a lot more than that. They also auto-transcribe your entire conversation, which is really useful. Here's why. First off, having a transcription for your podcast allows your podcast to be enjoyed by hearing impaired or non-native speakers. It improves your SEO by making your podcast more searchable. Plus, you can actually search in your transcription and find parts that you want to get rid of. Hell, you can even reuse your transcript in order to make blog posts for your website. The other day, a friend of mine sent me a podcast that they were listening to and they thought that I would enjoy. They listened to it on Apple Podcasts, so the link that they sent me opened on Apple Podcast, and there was a transcript of the episode right in the Apple Podcast app, and it was automatically synced up, and I was reading along with listening to the conversation. And strangely, it was really engaging. I think I ended up listening to the podcast far longer than I would have otherwise because of that transcription. So if people are bouncing off of your podcast or show quickly, maybe transcriptions can help. Another really cool feature with auto transcription is that the Riverside editor lets you edit your podcast using that transcript. So editing your podcast can be as simple as editing a document. Simply highlight the sections that you don't want and press delete. It's super easy. And speaking of easy, they also allow you to automate cleaning up your audio, cutting out silences, adding captions, generating social media posts, all straight from the Riverside app. There are too many features in Riverside to discuss in this video, but I have a few videos showing off some of my favorite features for Riverside linked down below that like button, so make sure that you check that out. And if you want to try out Riverside for yourself, you can get a discount by using my link down below that like button. Plus, it supports the channel. So thanks to everyone that uses my link, and thanks to Riverside for sponsoring this video. All right, the next piece of essential software that I use all the time is Notion. I use Notion for show notes. That way, my guests will know exactly what topics are going to be covered, and they can make sure that they know a little bit about the topics before I hit record. If you want your podcast conversation to flow, you need to put in the work in pre-production. I used to do everything in Google Docs, which is free, but I prefer Notion, which also has a free version. In fact, the version that I use is the free version of Notion. I've used it for over a year now, And not even once have I felt like I've been limited by not having the paid version. My favorite thing about Notion is that you can make templates, and it makes it very easy to make your show notes for your episode. So each week after we're finished recording, I just click the little plus button right here, and it makes a brand new document with all of the customizations that I've had for my specific show. Now all I have to do is fill in the blanks, and it really speeds up the process. And because my show notes always look the same, my co-hosts know exactly where everything is going to be, even though I'm the one who's putting in the work to make the show notes. It makes it really easy for both me and my co-hosts to keep the conversation flowing smoothly. Plus, if you want, you can even get a link to your show notes, and then you can share that with your audience so that they can see everything that you talked about on the show, and even some things that you didn't talk about. Because I don't know about you, I put a lot of work into my show notes. My show notes always have about 300% more topics to discuss than we actually have time to discuss on the episode. So I put lots and lots of links in there that maybe my audience would want to know about, but we never talked about on the episode. I don't just use it for show notes though. I also use Notion for every single video that I make, including this one, because Notion works like a database. It's searchable and it can link documents together. Plus your templates can have fields that you can fill in as you go, like checklists. So as I'm going through the steps that I take in order to make a video or a podcast and I finish them, I can check these things off as they're done. You can see here on each document I have a checklist that I can check off each step in the production process from start to finish. I start with my outline, then my thumbnails and my titles, and I keep going through until I have each step checked off. And when I'm done with a project or a podcast, I just select done and it automatically gets archived so it isn't there distracting me. For a really long time, I completely ignored titles and thumbnails. I wasn't good at making them. I didn't want to learn how to make them, and I didn't understand how important they were, mostly because when I first started doing content creation, it was on Twitch, which is all about live streams, and you don't need thumbnails for that. Once I learned how to make thumbnails, my videos and my podcast started to take off, and now they have millions of downloads and millions of views. For my thumbnails, I use a program called Affinity Designer, which costs $70. This is a one-time fee, not a subscription. I know that Photoshop is like the standard, but Affinity does everything that I need, and it's not a reoccurring cost. It's available for Mac, Windows, iPad, and my favorite feature for Affinity Designer is the Assets panel. Let's say that you've spent a bunch of time making a thumbnail and you've got some elements in the thumbnail that you feel like you're likely to use again on future projects, like when you make another thumbnail. I don't know about you, but I don't have any interest in doing the same work over and over and over again. That's where the Assets panel comes in really easy. When you have an asset that you want to save, simply give it a name and then click Add from Selection. Now, when you're in a new document and you want to use it again, you can just grab it from the Assets panel and drop it in. It retains any effects that you've applied to it, and then you can make small changes relatively easily. This feature by itself has saved me, I don't even know how much time it has saved me over the years, but I use it every single day. It's really awesome. I also love the artboard feature. YouTube lets you use up to 3 different thumbnails at once on your videos, and then they show those thumbnails to different people, and then YouTube tracks which thumbnails led to the most watch time, which is the metric that YouTube cares the most about. With the artboard feature, I can make as many different versions of a thumbnail as I want, and I can see them all at once in one document. If I get a new idea, I can drop in another artboard, and then I can even export all of them at once with all of the same settings so that they're all below that 2 megabyte limit that YouTube has for thumbnails. But let's say that you've got your thumbnail done and you've exported it, and you want to see what is it going to look like together with your title once it's on YouTube. I've got a bonus tool for that later on in the video, so stick around. After you've been podcasting for a bit, your audience will want to communicate with you. In the past, most podcasts would use an email address, which I've done too. It's fine, but I think it's better to let them talk to you using their voice. That's why I use VoiceCast. The way VoiceCast works is it allows users to leave you a high-quality voice message, which is automatically transcribed for you. That way, you can see exactly what they're saying before you even listen to it. All you have to do is give them the VoiceCast URL, and then they can leave you a message. There's a free version and a paid version. I've used the free version right up until today, which just allows them to leave a voicemail. But if you upgrade to the paid version, they can leave a text message, and then they can pick a voice that text message will be read in. So audience members that are shy about using their own voice can participate as well. And I think that is really cool. I just started using the free version on my podcast, and I have to say I'm really impressed with the audio quality. Here's an example of what it sounds like when a user leaves a message for my podcast.
What I want to hear you guys discuss today would be the topic of normalizing cross-save across platforms.
Up until now, I've only used the free version, but they recently reached out to me and they offered me a way to try out the paid version for free, so I decided to give it a shot. Here's what it looks like for your audience to use the text-to-speech feature, and this is what it sounds like.
This is an example of what it looks like to make a text-to-speech message on VoiceCast.
It also has options for video messages, which I haven't tried yet, but for doing video podcasts like I do, it might be an option that's interesting to you. But back to the audio version of this, I will say that when you download your audio files, it exports them as a .m4a file, which is fine, but I can't upload that kind of a file to Riverside. So each time I get a voicemail that I want to play on the show, I have to download it and then I load it into my digital audio workstation, which is called Reaper. Every content creator is going to need a digital audio workstation, or DAW for short, at some point. I started out using Audacity, and honestly, I used it for years, and I think about 3 years ago, I decided to give Reaper a try, and I like it a lot more. It's way more robust. Audacity is free, which is definitely a big plus for it, but I find that Reaper fits my workflow better. And Reaper's only $60. And yeah, if I'm building a house, I could go into the woods and find a rock and use that rock to put the nails in the wood, or I could spend money and get a hammer. And I think it'd be easier to just get a hammer, which is why I decided to pay the money for Reaper. If spending money on software is outside your budget, I can say Audacity will absolutely work for 99% of the tasks out there. But guess what? You can also use Reaper as much as you want for free. It's nagware, so every time you turn it on, it's going to give you a little pop-up saying, you've used Reaper for this much time. Do you want to buy a license? And after a few seconds, you could just close that and use Reaper as much as you want. I did that for about 6 months before I decided to pony up the dough and buy it. Like I said before, I use Reaper to edit voice calls from my audience. Sometimes they leave really long messages, so I like to edit them down so that they're only about 30 seconds long at most. Reaper makes it really easy. Then before I export it as an MP3, which Riverside can use, I add a compressor to the audio, which makes the loud parts a little bit quieter and the quiet parts a little bit louder so that my audience doesn't have to adjust the volume when listening to my show. But I also use Reaper when I make my videos. I use it to record the audio, and in fact, I'm using it right now to record this audio. Then I record the video separately on my camera, which the camera that I'm using today is my Sony a6700, and I'm using it with a Tamron 17-70 f2.8 lens. In case you're wondering what that would look like, this is what that looks like. Once I'm done recording, I sync up the audio and video files in DaVinci Resolve with just a few clicks, and then I start editing. But if you're an audio podcaster, Reaper is perfect for editing your audio-only show. I used to do a show that didn't have any video, and every single episode of that show, I think there's 50 episodes of it, were edited using Reaper. It has all the tools I've ever needed for editing audio. It's really, really good. And like I said, it's free or cheap. Whatever one works best for you. For a while, I was hesitant to add chapters to the videos and podcasts that I have on my YouTube channel. It is a lot of extra work, or I thought it would be, but if you work on the chapters while you're editing, it's so simple to include them, and it's a good idea because it makes a better experience for your audience because it allows them to quickly find the specific part of the video or podcast that they are interested in. This leads to more viewer retention because when a viewer is watching a video and they've decided, I don't need to watch this section anymore, well, without chapters, they might just leave instead of finishing the video. But with chapters, they can skip to the next section and then stay on your video for longer. I can already hear the comments. I don't want anybody to skip any parts of my videos. They're all important. And trust me, I get it. I really do. As a content creator, I tend to add a lot of context to my videos before I make my point, because that's the way that I tend to think and that's the way that I tend to speak. And skipping that content weakens my point. But if I have to choose between a user skipping a segment of one of my videos and the alternative is they just stop watching my video altogether, I'll take the skip, because that means more viewer retention and my video is more likely to be shared by YouTube. Another reason that you want to use chapters is it can help boost your SEO, because search engines can surface them, especially if you're using relevant keywords when you're making your chapter name, something I'm really bad at. So how do I make my chapters? I use this app, which is $15 on the Apple App Store, on the Mac App Store, sorry. It's called Creator's Best Friend. I don't know if there's a Windows equivalent. If you know of a Windows equivalent of this, let us know in the comments down below. It is compatible with all of the major NLEs or non-linear editors, that's your video editors, and I'll show you how to use it with DaVinci Resolve. As I go through and edit my video or podcast, I make markers using the M key. As I get to a new topic, I just press M and then I type out the title of it. So as you can see here on my timeline, I have all of the different chapters, and basically as I went through and edited, I just added these chapters in. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my media pool. I'm going to come over to my timelines, and you can see here I've got my timeline right here. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to go to timelines and then export, and then AAF, XML, EDL, DRT, OTIO. I know that that's alphabet salad, but that's the thing that you're going to click on. It's going to pop up this export timeline window, and I've already done this once, but all you have to do is name it, and then it's going to default to a DRT file. So down here on the bottom, I'm going to set that to an OTIO file, and I will click save. Now that I've done that, I'm going to open up Creator's Best Friend, which is right here. I'm going to click on Open File, and I'm going to open up the file that I just created. I'm going to click Open, and it's going to open up all of my chapters that I created with these little markers. You can see that if I click on this marker right here, it says Fremont leaked again. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here, and you can see Fremont leaked again. It's right there. So all I have to do now is click on Copy to Clipboard. And now I'm going to hop into my browser. Here's my podcast that is going up. I'm just going to drop this in and paste at the bottom, and then I'll just name this Chapters, and then I hit save. And now my video or podcast has chapters, and people can skip around to the parts that are most important to them. And another thing that's really cool is that when people come back to your video later, like maybe it's a tutorial and then they're like, how did I do that again? They can easily find the part that they were looking for instead of skipping around. Earlier when I was talking about making thumbnails with Affinity Designer, I said I had a bonus tool for you. This is it. It's just a website and it's free. It's called thumbsup.tv, and it lets you see how your title and thumbnail will look together if they were on YouTube. All you have to do is drop your image in the window and then give it a title, and it will give you a bunch of examples of how it will look on different devices and different sections of YouTube's page. The thing I like most about it is it shows exactly what words are going to be cut off from your title when people see it on YouTube, because YouTube gives you 100 characters for your title, but it usually cuts off your title after about 70 characters. So before you publish, you can see what's going to be cut off in, if anything. I typically make quite a few title and thumbnail combinations, and then I take screenshots and I send them to friends and I ask them which ones that they think are the best combinations. Then I pick the 3 that win, and I use those in YouTube's thumbnail test feature. Another thing that I really like about this site is that it also lets you see how your thumbnail is going to look in both light mode and dark mode. You want your thumbnail to stand out, and thumbsup.tv lets you see if it's what's working in both modes. As with everything, I have links down below that like button. Next up is a tool I don't use often. In fact, I probably only used it 2 or 3 times since I got it. But when I do, I'm super happy that I have it, because sometimes I don't have my laptop with me and an idea will come to mind that I want to start working on and start brainstorming with. I could just type things out on my phone, but I freaking hate typing on my phone. So what I do instead is I use a free voice recorder on my phone and just get some ideas out. These aren't organized thoughts, but just some ideas that I want to organize later and use as a jumping off point once I start writing my script. The main benefit is that it lets you get your ideas out quickly, but what I like most is that I tend to speak in a very different tone than I use when I write. It's more casual, it's more friendly, it's easier to follow, and by dictating my ideas through my voice, my brain kind of shifts into this different mode, and I just feel like the ideas come quicker and easier. Then when I get back to my computer, I airdrop the voice file to my computer, and I use this app called Whisper Transcription, and it transcribes my voice into text, which then I can copy into Notion before I start outlining my script. I'm going to take this 1.5 hour audio file, which is actually an episode of my podcast, and drop it in Whisper. Okay, so that's 8 of some of the best tools or software that you can use when making your videos or podcasts, but perhaps you've got the software part now nailed down already, and you're trying to decide what gear you want to upgrade for your next video or podcast. For that, watch this video right here. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.